on. The last group caught on really quickly, it went fine, but I will be in the building on Monday, stationary in Mr. Sessom's office, so that if you have any questions or need clarity, which one? The one that's upstairs, the only one that I know. So, I will be there, so if you have any questions, I'll be able to answer it at that time.
No, that's which Sessom's office would you be in?
Upstairs, she said. I only know the upstairs one. That's the only one that I know. Is there more?
So
you
got
got
office across the hall right over there. It's one upstairs.
So, Dibels, it stands for the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. It's funny because I've given this training at least 10 times and I've adapted this PowerPoint, and someone pointed out yesterday, which I didn't have a chance to fix, the B in basic is missing its basic early literacy skills. And the reason why it is next is because it came out in the late 80s, early 90s, and they've made some adaptations to it where it used to be initial sound fluency, now it's first sound fluency for kindergarten. For third grade, they added days to it. They changed some directions. So they updated it in the last 30 or so years. So there are several ways that Dibels Next helps. What I want to focus on is the monitoring at-risk students. We will truly be using this to progress monitor. It uses the tier process for RTI. Today we'll talk about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 students, and you'll get to see where your students are. But this will be something that you guys will learn how to administer. Although we do have a school-wide assessment team that administered your benchmarks for the last one they did and throughout the year 2 more times, you will progress monitor, so part of the training will be you'll learn how to do this. So, you know, we like to speak in code in education. You probably know the first 3, beginning, middle, and end of the year. The remaining acronyms are all of the measures that Dibels assesses. But they're not all assessed at the same time. And you'll see in the next slide what pertains to your specific grade level, but it is a progression. So you see for second grade, the 2 that are assessed in the beginning are nonsense word fluency and DORF, which is the Dibels oral reading fluency and retell. Nonsense words will only be assessed for the first benchmark. Reason being is they're expecting them to know them at that point. We know that that's not always the case because we'll find that some students might not have PSF or some of the other ones in the prior grade. So when we progress monitor, we'll continue to progress monitor based on what the needs of the students are, but for benchmark purposes, the oral reading fluency is the only consistency. Are y'all following me? Mm-hmm. So the next slides are just to show you that this is related to Common Core. It's nothing additional. It aligns. It's the work that you're already doing. So this is just confirmation of that. So this is the pencil paper version of it. Yours was all completed on Bport, which is the electronic online version of the system. And we'll, like I said, we'll get into that later this afternoon or this morning. So we are going to jump to the first measure that is assessed in second grade. And it's also assessed throughout first grade, called nonsense word fluency. Are you guys familiar with nonsense words? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's have a discussion about it. What do you think of nonsense words? Do you think that it's beneficial? Do you have any concerns about it?
I think it's beneficial.
Let's elaborate.
With like just like letter sounds and just like substitution and stuff like that. I think it's beneficial for those reasons.
The reason why I was asking is because I have had people take on the attitude, and I can say initially, as an original upper grades teacher, I had the same thought. Why am I teaching a child nonsense words? I need to teach them real words. But then when you look at the true purpose of nonsense words, you're not teaching them nonsense words. You're teaching them phonics. Mm-hmm. You're teaching them how to read. So if I put supercalifragilisticexpialidocious up there, although we may have a little bit of difficulty with that, you should be able to phonetically sound that out. I told a personal story earlier to the last group, and I'll share it with you as well. My daughter, who is a TAG student, she's in gifted, she's always had perfect grades thus far, pretty good reader. She had her Dibels done at her school. Apparently she didn't do too hot on it, and I got a letter home saying that she is not qualified for EIP, and they want to put her in EIP based on mainly her nonsense word fluency. There's a whole long story about how that went down, but we won't get into that. But she's not an EIP, and I've doubled her score after working with her for just 1 hour. The reason why it only took 1 hour, and that she might be an extreme to it, but I'm sure there are students in your class that will have the same experience, to where they've just never seen a nonsense word. When I put this word in front of her, she looked at it for a few seconds and was like, what is that? Because she was trying to process this word as a whole. She wasn't trying to just sound it out. So after exposing her to this game, literally, she got it, and now she can read them off, because it really wasn't that she needed the phonics, she just needed the exposure. Some students will truly need the phonics. We need to teach them the CBC words. So it'll, depending on the needs of your student, you'll have activities, which I'm sharing with you today, for nonsense words. But let me give you a description of what nonsense words is. There are 2 things that are looked at. It's looked at the CLS, which is the correct letter sounds. That means if I have the word goth, I'm able to say g-ah. Now, to take a step back, it's not g, ah, and th. Those are the schwas. Are you guys familiar with schwas? Mm-hmm. They're not correct when you're teaching it. You teach it not th and g. But if they say it with the schwa for the assessment, we accept it for that purpose. So you can get credit for correct letter sounds, or you can get credit for whole words read, where I just say the word goth. That is the goal, because if I say the whole word read, I've also said the correct letter sounds. So if I am able to just automatically read off the nonsense words, then I'm going to score the highest on this assessment. Do you guys understand how that works? So a student will get a piece of paper with a bunch of nonsense words. You'll set the timer, and they'll read as many words as they can, or sound out as many correct letter sounds as they can in 1 minute. Over here on this half of the table are a bunch of activities that go with nonsense words. The reason why I've come up with these activities is because you have to keep them engaged and keep them interested. We are not in any way teaching nonsense words. We're teaching phonics. But we're practicing what we're teaching through nonsense words activities, because just like in my child's case, you can't expect them to do well on an assessment and you haven't exposed them to the type of materials that they're going to be assessed on. So there's a variety of different things, from bingo to this one right here is called Time's Up, and that's where they choose a set of colored nonsense words. You set the timer, you try to read as many as possible, and then you try that 3 times and see how your scores got better. I would recommend the way doing this is, 1, we're not just setting this up in literacy centers, because everyone in your classroom will not need nonsense words. If you set that up and then Mr. Parks and Mr. Parker comes into your classroom and you have a student who's just flying through it, you'll probably get marked off for rigor, because that's not providing them higher order thinking, because they know it. These are for these students that are identified that really don't know it and need the support. Blast, which you're working with the Atlanta Speech School, and I'm working with Ms. Kirksky as well, that ties in really well with the intervention piece for nonsense words. Any questions on that? Okay, so you have copies of all of these. You don't have copies of all of the materials. You have a few of them that Mr. Sessoms pulled out, but he has a copy of all of these materials for you to practice. Another thing that I will caution you with is some of these things, if Mr. Parks or Mr. Parker walks in and they're just going like this, then you're going to get level of engagement concerns. You have to teach them that this is not a toy for you to play with, because what I don't want is for someone to try these activities and then come back to me and say, but I got in trouble for doing these. You just have to teach them how to do it. I would try it with them, show them how it's done, and then leave them to do whichever ones you feel work best with the group that you have. Okay? Can I move on from nonsense words to the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. There are also videos that go along with it. We have a member of the literacy leadership team, Mr. Sessoms. know who that?
Yes.
Okay, so later on when we meet, what we'll do is I'll share where you can get the videos, and they'll share some additional information because again, this is just an overview. You will get a thorough training on this material. So the next thing is the DOOR. That is the Dibble Oral Reading Fluency. This is for second and third graders, and it goes all the way up. This is the easiest running record you'll ever give. Because if you've given a running record before, you know that you have to do the repeats and the reversals, and you have to write the word that they say, and there's a lot of coding to do with it. Well, for Dibbles, it's literally just have they said the word. If they insert words, okay, they inserted words, but can they identify the words on the page? That's all the oral reading fluency is. They get 1 minute, they read it, and then of course you look at the quality of the reading. Was it fluent or was it choppy or so forth? But that's all the oral reading fluency is. And then they're asked to do a retell. The retell is quite different than anything that you've probably experienced before. When you think of retell, what do you think of?
Telling what you just heard, like a summary.
Okay. Are you thinking like comprehension questions?
No.
What about you? What do you think?
I think it's both. I think some of them are comprehension questions, telling, and others may be opinion or drawn into other thinking, like making connections.
Now that's truly what I think of when I think of retell. I think of using all of your skills together. For instance, when I did, and I'm using.
What type of car do you drive?
What's that?
What type of car do you